Yokwe, aloha, talofa, and welcome to the Pacific Way. In this episode, we travel to the Solomon Islands, where the Pacific Community's Ocean and Maritime Program, through the Pacific Safety of Navigation Project, is helping to improve the safety of the main port in Honiara through broad engagement with all relevant stakeholders. We now explore how stakeholder engagement and capacity building is assisting improve the overall maritime safety requirements in the Solomon Islands.
The world's largest ocean surrounds the islands of the Pacific. For generations, maritime transport has been an essential part of the people of this region. However, the safety of navigating through the oceans is increasingly being recognized as a key development challenge for Pacific Island countries. Key navigation sectoral policies and measures are still lacking in many Pacific countries. In recognition of this gap, the Regional Strategy for Safety of Navigation, endorsed by the Pacific Transport Ministers in April 2017, called for improving safety of navigation. This is the story of how three of these island nations, Vanuatu, Kiribati, and the Solomon Islands, rose to the safety challenge with support from the Pacific community. Better safety leads to greater efficiency and more effective shipping, while contributing significantly to the sustainable development of Pacific communities. However, implementing these services across a landscape as vast and varied as the Pacific is no easy task. It requires international technical cooperation and close regional collaboration. SPC began its assistance in 2016, thanks to the generous support from the International Foundation for Aids to Navigation by working closely with the International Association of Marine Aids to Navigation and Lighthouse Authorities, or IALA, to conduct technical, legal, and economic assessment missions in 13 targeted countries, including Kiribati, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. Diana Hill Suulisau, the officer on watch for the MV Avaikimaine, a domestic passenger and cargo ship in the Solomon Islands, has seen firsthand how navigation tools help in maintaining a safer and internationally recognized port in her country. Diana's knowledge of the waters around the Solomons was one of the key contributions to the consultation process for improving safety of shipping and navigation.
For Honiara Port, we talked about the local jetty, light at the Bokona Bay, the leading light. Maybe this one too, here at near the oil place here, right in front of the boats, the red one. Like they were built when there is no so much infrastructure and development. Yeah, it was long ago. Right now, like buildings are going taller, maybe they should put it up a bit, yeah, high a bit.
The Aids to Navigation Unit, which is rooted within the Solomon Islands Maritime Authority, was confident that the island nation will be able to achieve the goals set out by SPC's Safety of Navigation project and elevate the nation's ports to international standards.
There are quite a number of improvements, and one is this island lifted Solomon Island from the, removed Solomon Island from the target list. In the Pacific, there are 13 of us that's in the IALA target list, but now they removed Solomon Island because of the recommendations that they gave us, and we close off some of them. Slowly we'll close off the rest by 2021, I hope.
Patrick's confidence was echoed by SPC's Safety of Navigation team, who shed light on how well Solomon Islands has responded towards the IALA recommendations.
Solomon Island is one of the countries which is the most ahead in terms of aids to navigation and very up to date. In 2015, IALA conducted the first technical assessment of the country, and they come up with 39 recommendations. In 2017, 8 were closed, and up to today, 12 others have been closed.
Kiribati is another of these countries who are taking the lead in rectifying the recommendations provided by IALA. Kiribati's urgent need to meet all the IALA standards was driven by the rising number of ship damage and wrecks in the country's waters.
Yeah, before we don't have safety of navigation before, and we have some instances in Kiribati before, like shipwrecks, and mostly the shipwrecks. That's the problem with because they cannot navigate through the channels because they don't know the marks, and especially nighttime. Yeah, and because of our charts are not updated. We have plenty of reefs around Kiribati, and it's very dangerous for navigators to navigate, especially in the nighttime.
The Safety of Navigation project has been welcomed by Kiribati's local fishermen and seafarers, as the main port area has become safer to use.
Aids to navigations very much useful to taste, because before sometimes they were not working, and now we can see the difference that they most of the time are working, like the lights of the boys are in positions, and we can say that Tarawa is much safer now.
Local feedback on the safety efforts underway in Vanuatu has also been positive.
You're looking at ships coming in so frequently that you need to look at aids to navigation to assist, to make sure, to ensure that ships that come in, we do not have any, not shipwreck, but accident or something like that.
Conforming to IALA standards will have a ripple effect on these countries' economies, opening their doors for expansion and investment. The Solomon Islands, Kiribati and Vanuatu have made significant progress on safety of navigation standards and at the same time their global reputation.
The main achievement is not only to enhance the safety of navigation and aids to navigation services in general, but to empower countries to then be able to progress by themselves in the field of aids to navigation and safety of navigation.
The Phase 2 of the Pacific Safety of Navigation project, started in August 2018, aims to conduct aids to navigation risk assessments in all the 13 targeted Pacific Island countries and territories, following the IALA SIRA risk assessment tool, on which 12 of the 13 Pacific Island countries have been trained in June 2018. The thousands of seafarers in Solomon Islands, Kiribati and Vanuatu, whose lives and communities depend on the maritime industry, are hoping that by meeting international safety standards, the prosperity of the region will continue to expand, providing a better future for all islanders.
You're watching The Pacific Way, bringing you stories that matter to Pacific people. In August 2018, 14 Pacific Island countries reaffirmed their commitment to better managing their environments through the Pacific Ridge to Reef or R2R program when they met at the 3rd Regional Steering Committee in Townsville, Australia. Funded through the Global Environment Facility, the Pacific Ridge to Reef program is a multifocal, multi-agency and multi-country initiative that guides the coordinated investment for environmental protection and climate change mitigation.
The Pacific is known for its rich culture and natural resources. From the mountain ridges down to the blue sea. However, unsustainable development practices continue to degrade our natural environment. From poor management of municipal waste pollution and the destruction of habitats, catchments and wetlands. The close interconnections between the land, water and coastal systems in Pacific small island developing states and the heavy reliance of their economies and livelihoods on coastal resources means that planning and sustainable management of their natural environment is best achieved through integrated and coordinated efforts. These include a focus on freshwater use, sanitation, wastewater treatment and pollution control, sustainable land use and forestry practices, balancing coastal livelihoods and biodiversity conservation. To improve coordinated and sustainable environmental management in the Pacific region, over 50 participants from 14 national governments, project staff and development partners attended the Global Environment Facility-funded Pacific Ridge to Reef Program 3rd Steering Committee meeting in Townsville, Australia in August 2018.
From the perspective of the countries and the GEF, as well as the UN agencies, a programmatic approach enables us to address a wider range of issues. And in this case, it's the entire environmental issues that beset Pacific Island countries. Since the issues are quite broad, we're also able to mobilize a big chunk of resources from the GEF. And as you know, the entire Pacific Ridge to Reef program, the total GF grant is more than $80 million over a period of 4 to 5 years. And hopefully this will enable us to address those broad range of issues that the Pacific Islands countries face. The program consists of a regional program support project which is being implemented by SPC in 14 of the Pacific Island countries.
The 3rd Regional Steering Committee was preceded by a one-day pre-steering committee workshop where participants were provided tools to improve regional coordination and project management. During the meeting proper, an important agenda item was the approval of the regional project's budget and work plan for the next year, highlighting key implementation activities.
And so some of these things included things like progressing the science to policy work around rapid coastal assessments at the national level that link into some of the island diagnostic analysis work, and resulting in some form of a state of the coast or state of the environment type report for each country. To strengthen the information and decision support tools, so things like a project website, for example, or an improved project website that captures all of the work that's going on regionally but also at a national level. Some sort of web-based tool or information management tool plus some information around spatial data and spatial information that is also part of that platform. Alongside that, of course, is this whole effort around programmatic approach and supporting the countries through a programmatic approach. And things that are supporting that effort are things to do with their multi-year costed work plans that they'll be pulling together, support to intersectoral steering committee meeting processes and consultations and joint up action. One thing I'd like to highlight is recognition of the effort that was put into the postgraduate training in partnership with James Cook Uni. That's a really good initiative that is supporting our national project teams and other stakeholders that are working in a programmatic approach from around catchment management, coastal management and things like that, through an accredited, recognized entity that will allow them to have something at the end that they can then use to further their own professional development aspirations. So I think that's a big achievement that has happened in the last 12 months, but is also something that's going to be a focus of the program over the coming 12 months.
Species indicators that will turtle and bird and red. The difficulty in getting to function.
Over the course of the meeting, participants provided updates on regional and national project implementation. They were also provided with a unique opportunity to share highlights and lessons learned among participants. Key outcomes of the third Regional Steering Committee meeting were captured in a 2-page summary document and endorsed by the members.
There was a very strong appeal to ask SPC to conduct country visits, and of course they've committed to doing that as well. We've identified the challenges, and I think most importantly we've been able to reach agreement and resolutions on how to move forward. And I think that's the most important outcome of this week's meetings.
The GEF Pacific Ridge to Reef program was developed to provide an opportunity for Pacific Small Island developing states to develop and implement integrated approaches for the sustainable development of island economies and communities. The practical applications of the Ridge to Reef principles present the islands with a unique opportunity to build their capacity, support livelihoods, improve public health and quality of life, with a chance to upscale their efforts.
I hope you enjoyed our stories tonight. Now look forward to more exciting stories next week. The Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture, or FESTPAC, is the world's largest celebration of Indigenous Pacific Islanders, drawing artists, cultural practitioners, scholars, and officials from member nations of the Pacific community. But it is also the platform for Pacific Islanders to showcase our creativity through film production. And tonight, we'll leave you with this story on film arts. Don't forget to check out all our latest news and videos on the Pacific Community YouTube channel and the Pacific Way Facebook page. Until next week, tofa ni, koikia, bye-bye.
Huge diversity of different cultures and different types of things. What we wanted to do in the programming was create a wide range of programs, everything from films for kids to lots of documentaries and big feature films.
A one-day forum was also held during the film festival entitled From Summer to Sea, Filmmaking in the Pacific. Around 20 visiting filmmakers and producers attended the forum, which gave them the opportunity to meet and discuss the issues that are important for filmmakers across the Pacific.
A long time ago, after the reefs and the sea turtles were created, a people lived on tiny volcanic islands in the Great Pacific Ocean. It was as if a giant had thrown fistfuls of rocks as far as he could throw, scattering islands across the sea.
I think the nature of filmmaking is that it's a very expensive enterprise to do. So I think that the availability of different cultural, environmental and political subjects makes it immediately easier to access the world around them. There's immediately interesting things around. There hasn't been a strong tradition of filmmaking in the Pacific, so there's a lot of untold stories there. Particularly in these days, some of the technologies are becoming easier to access, so there is more opportunity for filmmakers to access the sorts of equipment that would have been out of reach in the past. And so now those stories that are just there waiting to be told are ripe for the picking, I guess.